and welcome. You're watching Beat Diabetes Myths and Facts. The COVID-19 pandemic has positive and negative impacts on different aspects of lifestyle behaviors. Negative lifestyle behaviors are associated with an increased risk of adverse outcomes from COVID-19. Now, while dealing with COVID, we've overlooked the fact that people's lifestyles were severely disrupted. Many people have become physically inactive, developed irregular eating patterns, which has led to unhealthier lifestyles and aggravated lifestyle-related diseases. The COVID-19 pandemic has also caused significant changes in our homes, our working lives, and also an elevated level of stress. A multi-sectoral approach promoting healthier diets and increasing physical activity can help in slowing down the diabetic epidemic and heart diseases. Beat Diabetes Myths and Facts will impact and help a large number of people to prevent or control metabolic disorders. Today we have with us a panel of experts to share with you advice on how you can lead a healthier life. Dr. V. Palani Kumaran, consultant physician and diabetologist from the Palani Kumaran Specialty Hospital, Madurai, is with us. Dr. Arun Kaushik, he is an associate professor and consultant interventional cardiologist, PSG Hospitals and Shadow Heart Foundation from Coimbatore. Dr. Deepankar Mukhopadhyay, professor, Department of Cardiology, IPGMER, Kolkata, is also with us. Thank you, doctors, very much for sparing your time and being with us on the show. Dr. Palani Kumaran, if I can begin by asking you, how different are long-term complications of COVID-19 in people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and what are the precautions that people with diabetes should take post a recovery from COVID?
Regarding these long-term complications, similar to that of non-diabetic population, diabetic populations also are at risk for developing these long-term complications. The so-named called long haulers. They do develop some amount of fatigueness, shortness of breath, some joint pain, some amount of depression. These sort of things should do happen even in diabetics, similar to that of non-diabetics. And among diabetics, these type 1 diabetes as well as type 2 diabetes both have increased amount of blood glucose level. So compared to the previous era of COVID, these patients may need further aggressive glycemic control because their blood sugar level will be so much raised, either due to the disease itself, that is due to the COVID itself, which causes the spike protein of the COVID protein damages the beta cells of the pancreas, so it causes the decreased insulin secretion, and also it causes increased insulin resistance, so that the blood sugar level is so much high, and this predisposes the patients to develop diabetic complications. Especially these type 1 patients are more prone for diabetic ketoacidosis, and even type 2 diabetes are also more prone for increased hypercoagulable states, so that they can have a poor blood flow to the limbs, and they can develop some sort of peripheral arterial disease. These sort of complications can occur. So even post-COVID era, all diabetic patients, either type 1 or type 2 diabetes, should follow proper periodical checkup, and they should maintain a proper healthy meal plan, and they should follow proper exercise once they are fit, and they should follow regular medications. They may need a small adjustment or even increased dosage of the medications. They should have a regular follow-up and periodical checkup with the physician and diabetologist.
Right. Dr. Kaushik, post-COVID recovery, even people with no prior history of heart disease or hypertension are developing high blood pressure. Is this because of infection stress and medication, or is it a long-term complication?
Unfortunately, people with no prior history of any heart ailments do become new hypertensive patients. The causes of newly diagnosed hypertension post-COVID, which we encounter commonly, are one, it could be unmasked hypertension, wherein the hypertension being present already and not being diagnosed earlier due to unawareness and the belief that hypertension occurs only in old age group. Second, it could be reactive or transient hypertension pertinent to any prolonged hospital admission because of stress, which could be a precursor of profound hypertension in later stages. Third, COVID-specific hypertension, which needs more understanding of the disease, along with long-term data of the patient to ascertain the causal factor. In most cases, the causes of hypertension are multimodal with no single dominant cause. So what are the cause would be hypertension or high blood pressure needs evaluation for end organ damages and subsequent treatment ultimately either by the physician or a cardiologist.
Interesting. Dr. Mukherjee, if I can come to you then, pulmonary embolism has been reported very frequently in COVID-19. It's also often noted in patients with COVID-19 without other standard risk factors. What is, if you could explain to our viewers, what is a pulmonary embolism? Can it cause a heart attack or a cardiac arrest?
Yeah, that's a very dreaded complication of COVID-19. Actually, what happens, the COVID-19, it causes endothelial dysfunction. That is the lining of the vessels. They get dysfunction, and thereby the cascade of thrombosis generates, and the patient remains in the high risk of pulmonary thromboembolism. Pulmonary thromboembolism means that some clots are going in the pulmonary circulation and it is obstructing the pulmonary flow. So the blood cannot go from one ventricle to the lungs where they can get oxygenated, and the patient suffers from severe hypoxia. We call it oxygenless situation. Now this pulmonary embolism is suspected when the patient suddenly deteriorates. Patient is on some oxygenation, patient is critically ill, and the patient goes suddenly into severe heart rate acceleration, severe respiratory distress, and severe hypoxemia, that is that oxygen level, oxygen saturation falls. This is a very dreaded situation, and massive pulmonary embolism can lead to cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest by passing massive pulmonary embolism is a dreaded complication which can be prevented by the use of prophylactic and proper doses of anticoagulants that prevent that clotting phenomenon. But at the same time, we have to be very careful about the bleeding risk. So there is a very important equilibrium situation which should be maintained so that the bleeding cascade do not flare up and the patient dies of bleeding.
All right. Dr. Palanikumaram, if I can bring you back into the conversation, are the targeted glucose levels for diabetes management different for different age groups? And, does the presence of a diabetes complication and other comorbid conditions affect these target levels?
Yeah, absolutely. So we ideally for generally the dictum is you should have a proper glycemic control. What we need is the maintaining of the A1C of less than 7%. This is called stringent control. But certain population needs less stringent control. That means you can even maintain HbA1c of more than 8%, especially the elderly population. So those who are fragile and who have a short lifetime expectancy. So these populations definitely will not need stored stringent control of glycemic control. And similarly, though patients who have some other comorbid illness, especially the chronic kidney disease or any liver disorders, these kind of populations are more vulnerable for development of the hypoglycemia, that is a low blood sugar. So these kind of populations also need to have a less stringent glycemic control. So you may need to maintain the glycemic, HbA1c of around 8%. And if the patient is having some brittleness in the diabetes, or the patient is more prone for hypoglycemic episodes, these kind of populations will also need a lesser glycemic control. So whenever the duration of the diabetes also is quite long-standing diabetes with quite a lot of burnt out, what we say is burnt out diabetes, or the patient will be having a long-term vascular complication, especially that cardiac complications or coronary artery disease, cerebrovascular disease. These kind of vascular complications also, in that case also we need to have a less stringent control is enough. What we need more stringent control is for especially the younger individuals and the diabetes of earlier duration of diabetes, maybe first few years of diabetes. We need to have a very stringent glycemic control with which we can definitely prolong or even retard the onset of the diabetic complications, and these kind of populations will need to have a strict glycemic control.
Right. Dr. Arun Kaushik, hypertension can be detected at the primary healthcare level, and there are several low-cost treatments that can effectively control hypertension as well. Yet the prevalence of hypertension is increasing day by day. What perhaps could be the reason, and what are the consequences of hypertension on overall health?
Hypertension should be detected at the primary care level because of the magnitude of the problem in our society, and the low-cost treatments are to be started because of the started the earliest to prevent the complications of the uncontrolled high blood pressure in the society. The reasons of hypertension in our society is mainly because of the increasing in progressive risk factors in the last 4 decades amidst multiple health problems. So the reasons of the hypertension in our population are mainly first the genetic susceptibility, that is vulnerability of our own population to have heart diseases and hypertension, diabetes, etc. And other problems could be either high salt intake, increase in the smoking, increase in alcohol intake, stress, and dietary changes like less fiber intake and more refined carbohydrate and saturated fats, and more junk food starting from childhood. And there is a lack of awareness in the society that hypertension is the disease of the elderly. So these are the problems why we have hypertension in our society in a very large scale. And the consequence of hypertension are either could be heart attacks, that is blockage in the vessels of the heart, kidney failure, blockages or problems in the vessels of the kidney, and heart failure. There is a decrease in pumping function of the heart, or there could be vessel blockages in the either the vessels of the eyes, limbs, etc. So summing up, there is a gross change in the lifestyle in a vulnerable population like us has led to a uncontrolled hypertension in large scale in our society.
So low-cost treatment, especially at the primary healthcare centers, is something which is important, not just, of course, in detection of hypertension, but that applies across the board. With that, we're going to step into a very short break. We'll be back on the other side with more questions for our doctors. Welcome back. Professor Dipankar, Dr. Professor Dipankar, if I can come to you at the moment. Post the COVID-19 infection, the work from home culture is causing people to eat more and exercise less. What are some of the ramifications of this when it comes to the management of heart diseases, and how frequently should people now be consulting a doctor for medication management?
Frequently, we have patients who are homebound. And those who are not yet patient, those who are apparently normal, healthy persons, they gain weight, they do gain weight, and they because of lack of their usual activity and the lack of exercises, and barring them from the parks, etc., where they used to walk otherwise in the normal situation. So to combat this, I will say that you have got some place in your home and in your roof, if the roof is available, or you can at least walk around your home if it is available space, and you should choose some time which will allow you not to be exposed to the maximum people, so that you can walk in the early morning or in the late evening. That sort of walking, and that to be cautious about the intake of food and the food characters. It should be less in carbohydrate particularly, and less in saturated fat or trans fat. That sort of fooding is to be encouraged. Important thing is to just check them, and those who are already patient, their status and their change of biochemical values like lipid profile, sugar, that all will get deranged. And during this period, this derangement in the blood sugar level is frequently seen, and we have to check them at least 3 months or 4 months interval if they have got the disease. If they have no disease, they should be consulted at least once to make them aware that you are going to have this problem out of your new lifestyle, which is very sedentary and is prone to give more consumption of food. This is my advice,
Right.
usually that is going on in day-to-day practice.
All right. So a lot of lifestyle changes there that you are in fact recommending, especially in terms of eating patterns. That's interesting. Dr. Palani Kumaram, if I can come back to you, generally eating fruits is considered a part of a healthy diet, but there is also a lot of confusion about the consumption of fruit, especially in those who have diabetes. Which are the fruits that are safe for people who have diabetes, and can they safely also consume fruit juices?
As rightly said, fruits are definitely are regarded as a healthy diet, and we know that fruits contain roughly about 80 to 90% of water only, and it also contains the fleshy part of the fruits will have soluble fibers, and the fruit skin will have insoluble fibers, and lot of beneficial effects, mainly by its vitamin content, vitamin B, vitamin C, beta carotene, phytonutrients, and lot of benefits are there with the fruits. Especially it does better with anti-obesity effects, anti-inflammatory effect, antioxidant effect. A lot of benefits are there for the fruits. But the main misconception in among diabetics is it may raise the blood sugar level, because fruits also contain, in comparison to that of vegetables, fruits also contain sugars. That's the main thing which is being concerned. And the recommendation is that fruits should be included in the healthy lifestyle of any diabetic patients, and it should be taken along with very healthy vegetables. You should take non-leafy vegetables, with leafy vegetables, and also it should be a part of our healthy diet in all diabetic patients. And the best fruits which can be advocated is the fruits with the low glycemic index. That glycemic index is the load, the effect of rising the blood sugar burden. That's some fruits will have less glycemic index, yes, especially with apples, guava, pears, citrus fruits. These kind of fruits definitely can be taken. And yet another point to remember is the fruits should be avoided better when the blood sugar is so high. So it can be taken when the blood sugar control is achieved. So if you are maintaining a good glycemic control, you can definitely have roughly around 100 grams of fruits daily. And whatever the fruits I said, definitely it will be useful, and it's better and even the fruits have been considered as even in the prevention of diabetes. So even non-diabetic population also can take some roughly about 200 grams of fruits in their regular diet pattern. And among diabetics also, if you are you're having a regular intake of roughly about 1000 to 125 grams of fruits every day, definitely even it retards the complications of diabetes. So such health benefits are there with fruits. Definitely all the patients, all the diabetic population should inculcate fruits in their healthy diet.
Dr. Arun Kaushik, if I can come back to you at the moment, people who take cholesterol lowering drugs assume that they needn't necessarily follow any dietary restrictions or make food choices. Is that true?
Obviously not right, because drugs for the cholesterol reduction is only additive to the dietary changes and do not replace the lifestyle intervention, which includes primarily dietary modification. And drugs are to be started only after trial of lifestyle changes, and that is dietary changes alone has failed to control the cholesterol levels. Simply, drugs can't fetch us health. Rather, lifestyle changes like dietary modification can make us healthy. Dietary changes are not necessarily treated as restrictive, since the faulty dietary patterns have been acquired by us recently in the last 3 or 4 decades after rapid urbanization and globalization. Hence, the success of dietary and other lifestyle changes lies in the way it is motivated to our traditional ways as a big constructive change rather than a restrictive change.
Right. Dr. Dipankar, can shortness of breath be a symptom of a heart attack or any other type of a heart complication, and what tests should a person do in this situation?
Okay, that's a very pertinent and very important symptom of cardiac diseases as such. But shortness of breath does not mean that it is a cardiac disease. It may be due to lung disease, it may be due to simple anemia, it may have so many causes of may lead to this shortness of breath. But of course, we do encounter shortness of breath during cardiac ischemia, that is the heart attack, so called. Particularly the dyspnea or the shortness of breath may be the presenting symptom in case of elderly people or who are diabetic, and they may not be aware of the so much pain, but they may just become develop shortness of breath suddenly without any antecedent cough, cold, or fever. So, sudden onset of shortness of breath is definitely a indicator that the patient may have gone into heart attack.
All right, that's all the time we have on the show today. Thank you very much, doctors, for sparing your valuable time and being with us on NDTV.